All right, let me share my screen. And again, we'll focus on 8 specific lessons that Hanukkah, and most importantly, the lights of Hanukkah really come to teach us. Here is my shared screen. Right here. Okay, you can all see the screen?
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. All right. So just to go over again, very briefly, I know we did this 2 weeks ago, but very briefly, the miracle of Hanukkah and the emphasis that the sages chose to focus on, which is not really the military victory of the Maccabees and their comrades over the Greeks, but it's really on the miracle of the menorah light lasting for 8 days instead of for 1 day, which is interesting because really the military victory of the Maccabees in the year 164 BCE was a victory that took them 3 years. Think about this, 3 years to get to. So it was on their minds much more than the miracle of the 8 days. 8 days versus 3 years is really nothing. That's number one. Number two, it was quite impressive of a victory. I mean, the small overcoming the many, like we say in the Al Nisim prayer that we recite each and every day of Hanukkah, during the Amidah prayer and also during the grace after the meals. It was the small over the many, the weak over the mighty, and the pure over the impure, as we also say. That seems to be a much greater miracle. So why do we symbolize Hanukkah, and why do we focus on Hanukkah only on the miracle of the light? We should also be focusing on the miracle of the military victory, right? Maybe we should go out to the fields like we done Lag BaOmer and throw a bow and arrow to at least have a symbol of that victory. But no mention of it it takes over any custom, any law of Hanukkah. All we speak about is the miracle of the light. It's quite fascinating. I understand that maybe it's because, as some historians teach us, that the military victory of the Maccabees only lasted for about 100+ years. Didn't last forever. While the tradition of the menorah lasts until this very day. So in a long-term basis, really all we have is the miracle of the lights, and therefore we focus on the miracle of the lights. But still, even if the military victory lasted for 100 years or so, it's still a miracle that's worth celebrating. We even mentioned it in the prayer. So why not have it infiltrate any of the customs of Hanukkah and so on? And I think it's because in Judaism, we are really obsessed with light. Let's just read this. Perhaps the reason is rooted in the centrality of light in Judaism. Does anyone want to read? And then we'll get to the 8 lessons. Anyone? Anyone? Oh, Julia, I can see you raising your hand. Thank you. Thank you. Please. Go ahead.
Perhaps the reason is rooted in the centrality of light in Judaism. Indeed, ever since the first day of creation, when God uttered the words, "Let there be light," Judaism has been obsessed with spreading God's light to our world. Thus, it is no coincidence that Judaism has chosen to yet again focus on the miracle of the Hanukkah lights over the military miracle. For these lights embody our vocation and our very raison d'etre.
Right, raison d'etre, right, exactly, our reason of being, right, which is that French expression. But just want to focus on that for a little bit, on this idea. You know, it reminds me of the anecdote where Rabbi Shlomo Carlebach, who was known as the singing rabbi, would take his guitar and go around the world to sing and bring joy to Jews and bring them back to the fold, so to speak. And in the Yom Kippur War, 1973, when the Syrians attacked us from the north and the Egyptians from the south, he was asked, really, I think it was by the BBC, what is the difference, Rabbi Carlebach, what is the actual difference, or the moral difference between an Israeli soldier fighting for his life and a terrorist or an Arab soldier fighting for his life in times, you know, of the Yom Kippur War, that those countries that attacked Israel. At the end of the day, both are soldiers fighting for their country and fighting for their lives. So what's the essential difference between the two? And he responded in a very, maybe sharp way. He said, I'll tell you what the difference is. This terrorist, by the time he picks up his rifle, positions it, and shoots it, his main prayer is, let me see how many people I can kill. I hope I can kill as many. The Jew, or the Israeli soldier during the Yom Kippur War, when by the time he picks up his rifle, positions it, and shoots, his main prayer is, let there be peace in the world, God, so that I won't have to shoot anyone or kill anybody. That's the main difference. And indeed, I think it's been embedded in our DNA, so to speak, that we don't want military victories as we don't want military battles altogether. We want light. It's in the very foundation of the creation of the world. Let there be light. It almost became our motto by which we live. We want to create light. Judaism is about being lights unto others, or as the prophet says, to be a light unto the nations, or lagoim in Hebrew. That's what we're obsessed with. And maybe this on a deeper level, on a more spiritual level, explains why indeed Hanukkah is celebrated specifically with light. Yes, the Maccabees did win. They did have a very impressive military victory, or maybe even a very impossible military victory. But still, we always go back to our vocation, our very raison d'etre, which is to spread light in the world. That's not something we want as Jews. If we have to fight, we have to fight. But it's not something we want. And it's certainly not something where we want to celebrate. What we do want to celebrate is being lights. That's why, by the way, in 1948, when Ben Gurion and the leaders of the modern state of Israel had to decide what name to give the Israeli army, they called it the Tzva Hagana Israel, the army of defense, the Israeli defense forces, right? IDF, Israeli Defense Forces, or Tzva Hagana Israel. Because as they put it, Jews are not there to fight. They are not there to ever initiate a fight or initiate a battle. We are there only to defend ourselves. If we are forced into a fight, we'll defend ourselves. And therefore, the army should be called the Israeli Defense Forces. Military victories are not something that we desire, and it's certainly not something that is part of our DNA. You know what is part of our DNA? Let there be light. And that's why we focus on light. And that's why, again, all these custom, not just the halacha of lighting the menorah each and every night we add another candle. Tonight we'll add another one, and it will be 4 candles altogether, as we all know. But also the other customs, like eating donuts or eating latkes, right? They remind us of the miracle of light, because latkes have a ton of oil, and if you make them like a good Yiddish mama, you'll add even more oil to that. And donuts, the same thing. So again, it's to remind us of the light, of the miracle of the light. And that's why, and the reason, again, we focus so much on light is because it is a part of who we are as a nation and as individuals. So let's go to the lights themselves and learn 8 different lessons for the 8 different nights of Hanukkah, lessons that the light themselves teach us, right? The Hanukkah candles themselves teach us. Let's go to lesson 1, and we can develop the idea. And again, I don't want this to be just a monologue. So if you have any comments, any questions, any disagreements, anything to say, please feel free to speak your minds. So lesson
I'll
1,
read.
please. Thank you. Who said that?
Sue.
Oh,
I gotta get my video.
yeah, I don't see you, but I see your name. Oh, now I can see. Oh, fine.
All right.
There you
Number
go.
1.
Number
Our
1, please.
Our Hanukkah candles are unfazed by darkness and any other opposing force. Instead of focusing on the darkness that they are fighting against, they are focused on the divine light that they are fighting for. Indeed, the only way to overcome darkness fully is by lighting the lights of our souls, one light at a time, one mitzvah at a time.
Right. So this has a deep psychological and at the same time also spiritual idea attached to it. And that is that, psychologically, when we face our own inner demons, our own personal challenges, what is the best way to face them? And psychologists will tell you that the natural instinct is fight or flight, either to fight them or to flee from them. Judaism doesn't focus not on fighting and not on fleeing. Judaism doesn't focus on the challenge at all, on the darkness at all. What does it focus on? On the positivity of the soul and developing that positivity, on our talents, on our skills. Sometimes darkness overcomes us because our light is so small. So you know what the best way to fight that darkness is? By increasing our light. And the more we increase our light, the more we increase positivity, the more that darkness will almost automatically go away. It reminds me I just heard this. We had a guest this past Shabbat, but his grandfather was a big Hasidic Jew, Rabbi Reuven Dunin, and he was telling us some stories about his grandfather. And one of the stories was how his grandfather came from a very secular background. He was a kibbutznik in Israel, Rabbi Reuven Dunin, and he became more and more engaged with Judaism. And at one point, he had many, many questions that were confusing him, and he thought of deserting Judaism altogether. And he went to see the Lubavitcher Rebbe, who helped him a lot. And one morning, he woke up, and he still wasn't calm. He had most of his questions were already answered, and he already had much more clarity. But one morning, he woke up, and that state he was in threatened to throw everything that he had learned up until now in the drain. So he was very disturbed. He wakes up and he's disturbed, and he goes and he sees the Lubavitcher Rebbe and says, "Rebbe, I have a lot of questions this morning. Can't take it. I'm in the troubled emotional state. I need to speak with you." And the Rebbe immediately said to him, "Reuven, one second. Did you have breakfast this morning yet?" He says, "No, I didn't have breakfast. I'm bothered by these questions." He says, "Reuven, go have breakfast. Maybe take a shower, calm down, and then come speak with me." He went, he had breakfast, took a shower, and went back to the Lubavitcher Rebbe, and the Rebbe said, "So, you still have questions for me?" He says, "No, Rebbe, I think all I needed was a good breakfast." Now, the Rebbe saw that in him, but sometimes we're all troubled. Now, yes, sometimes there's basis to that trouble. Sometimes there's no basis, and we have to be able to just focus on the light, focus on what you need to do, whether it's what your body needs to do, eat breakfast, what your soul needs to do, and that's to do good. But if you focus on the positivity, instead of trying to fight the challenge or the questions in the darkness, sometimes we'll find that that's all that we needed, and the darkness, almost as mentioned, automatically goes away. I'll tell you yet another story of the Lubavitcher Rebbe, and I want to open this up. It's a story I think I've shared before, but about a man named Meshulam Weiss, who just before getting married many, many years ago, he went together with his bride to receive a blessing from Rabbi Schneerson of blessed memory, the Lubavitcher Rebbe. And they walked into his room, and they had a private audience. And in the middle of the discussion, the bride of Meshulam tells Meshulam, "Please step out of the room. I need to speak to the Rebbe privately." Fine. He steps out of the room. After 20 minutes, the Rebbe calls him back with his bride, and he blesses them. They leave the room. They got married. And shortly after their chuppah ceremony, their marriage or their wedding day, Meshulam tells his bride, "Tell me, I have to ask you, it's been bothering me. Why did you want me to leave the room when we went to receive a blessing from the Rebbe?" And his bride tells him, "Well, I asked you to leave the room because really I wanted to cancel the marriage, and I wanted the Rebbe's advice." "Why did you want to cancel the marriage?" And the bride says, "That's because I have a very short temper. And I knew that this short temper will hurt my marriage. It won't be fair towards you, Meshulam. I said to myself, I should just cancel the marriage. I'm not going to ruin someone else's life because of my short temper." And the Rebbe smiled, and he said to him, her, "Look, don't cancel your marriage. I understand you have issues with anger, but you'll have many children, and your children will teach you patience. And until then, go and visit the sick and do as much good as you can. And that will also teach you patience, and it will lower your temper and eventually eradicate it." Now, Mrs. Weiss listened to the Rebbe, and thank God they were blessed with 17 children. 17 children. Mrs. Weiss, at a later stage in her life, went to an OBGYN, post-menopause, and this was a new one that had never examined her before. And he's looking at the x-rays or whatever it is, and he sees on the computer that she has what's called an infertile womb, which means that it was impossible for her to give birth. So the OBGYN doctor tells Mrs. Weiss, "I'm terribly sorry for you. I see you're a religious woman. I know you have a lot of children. You probably didn't have any children." She had a good laugh. She didn't tell him that she had 17 children. And she went home and she said, "Look, Meshulam, it's a miracle. I have an infantile womb, but we were blessed with 17 children." And Meshulam says, "You see, that was the power of the Lubavitcher Rebbe. When he gave you that advice, that your children will teach you patience, he was also giving you a blessing that you'll have children. And that's why that miracle happened. But it's a beautiful story, and it's a true story. They live in Los Angeles. I think Meshulam Weiss passed away maybe 3 years ago, but it's a published story. And but it's a story that touches me most because, not just because of the miracle, but because of the brilliance of the Rebbe who taught this woman, who overcame quickly her bad temper, that sometimes all you need to is focus on the light. Go and visit the sick. Go and do good. That you have children and you raise your children, and they'll teach you patience. Instead of fighting your bad temper and trying to cancel your marriage, sometimes all you need to do is do good and do good and do good, and then the bad almost automatically goes away. Now, I understand there are mental diseases, there are clinical situations in which the bad needs to be dealt with. Speaking generally here, that very often we get so overwhelmed by our emotions that we forget that sometimes all that is needed is for the soul to have some expression and to do good. Because very often those emotions come from the cry of the soul. The soul is shouting at us through those emotions. You're not taking care of me. So when we focus on the soul and focus on lighting it up and sharing its light with others, then automatically these emotions go away and the darkness that we may experience fades out. So that's one important lesson that the Hanukkah candles teach us. They're unfazed by darkness. They focus just on kindling lights. That's all. Before we go to lesson number 2, does anyone want to share anything? No. Anyone? Yeah. Yes, Mindy.
Yes, I have a question.
Yes.
Is this relating to why many of the Orthodox in Israel do not believe in going into the IDF because they feel praying or looking for the light is just, I don't mean to get into any politics, but.
No, it's not politics. To me, it's not politics. But look, there are, and I think that's for other reasons, because they don't recognize the state of Israel, unfortunately. They don't recognize Zionism.
Which
I think the reasons are deeper than that. And again, if they would connect to the idea of the IDF, again, it's a defense force. Right? So it's exactly what we stand for.
Right.
We're not an offense or an attacking force. You know, it's interesting. All the wars of Israel, just to emphasize this point, if we want to go there, all the wars of Israel were never initiated by Israel.
Right.
They were always initiated by our enemies. That's because we're not an attacking force, we're a defensive force.
Right. To our
anyhow, so I don't think it's that. I don't think it's that. I think it's deeper. I think it's more ideologically connected to their relationship with Zionism, etc.
Okay. Yeah. But some are Zionists, and yet they do not feel they feel they should just pray all day. So are they always looking for the light?
I look, I staunchly disagree with that, but we'll have to ask them. I don't know.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't know. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. No, thank you, Mindy. Thank you. Good point, though. Anyone else? Okay, let's go to lesson 2. Akanukah candles. Does anyone want to read? Please, yeah, Mindy, go for it. Yeah.
Our Hanukkah candles are only bodies of wax. They only become true candles when they kindle their wax with fire. The same can be said about human beings. We are only bodies of flesh and blood. Until we kindle our spiritual wicks with a divine fire and bring light to a person in need and healing to a broken spirit.
Right. I'm going to mention that this reminds me of the Hebrew word for life. It's interesting. The Hebrew word for life, as we all know, is chaim. That's why we say lechaim, right? Chaim is a word that is in the plural tense. There is no word for one singular life in Hebrew, as it is with, I think, all other languages. Hebrew, the word for life is in the plural tense. You know why? Because the Hebrew language, which is the divine language, recognizes that you are only living, truly living, if you are living a plural tense life, if you are helping the person in need, if you are reaching out to others, if you are healing broken spirits, if you're only living selfishly for yourself, then you're not alive. Then there's no chaim there. So otherwise you're just a body of wax, like we just said. But it's only when you light up the world with your light with the light of your soul, that you become now a real entity, a real candle, a real life, a real chayim. If you haven't lit up someone else's world, then you are really just a body of wax. You're not alive. It's like Rabbi Steins would often say that there are two types of people in this world. The people that are alive, and there are people you can't really say they're alive. You can only call them not dead. You can't say they're alive. What's the difference between the two? People that are alive are people that share their lights with others, that have kindled their flames, and they warm others. They bring warmth and joy and light to others. The people that don't do that are just bodies of wax. If you're only focused on me, you're really not dead. But we can't say you're alive. And that's the other big lesson from the Hanukkah candles. Okay, we can go to lesson 3 unless, please, I welcome more comments and ideas. Okay, let's go to lesson 3. Lesson 3, does anyone else want to read Hanukkah candles? Yes.
I'll read it.
Okay, all right, Sue, thank you. And then Julie, you'll read the next line. I saw your hand. Also, Mindy, you can continue to read afterwards. Okay, let's go. 3.
Our Hanukkah candles must sacrifice their wax in order to continue to shine bright. Indeed, light is produced by self-sacrifice. It is not enough to talk the talk. We must also walk the walk, give of ourselves, and invest all of our resources in order to create light and make a positive and lasting change in our part of the world.
Right. So what this is saying is that it's nice, to fake smile at others, or, give very little, the littlest we can give. But if we really want to shine a lasting light in this world, then it comes with self-sacrifice. It comes with tremendous investment. It comes with pouring our emotions. And otherwise, it doesn't really impact. You see that often in social settings where people are half talking to each other. They're really not invested. They're not really present in that conversation. They're not there to make an impact or to become vulnerable. But they put on a good show. That's not how you light a light. The way you light a light is by sacrificing a part of your wax, giving a little bit of yourself to the other, making sure that your entire heart and soul is invested in it. If yes, then you'll light a light, just like a candle. And of course, that is learned from the Hanukkah candles, because during the times of the Maccabees, electricity didn't exist, right? The only way you could light a light is with candles, with olive oil. But again, olive oil gives of itself. The candles give of themselves to be able to shine bright. I think it's an important lesson, especially in parenting, for example, and in other areas. But it reminds me of that story of the little boy who came to his father after a long day of work. His father comes home tired and he says, Daddy, I haven't seen you all day long. I have a question for you. How much do you make an hour? And the dad became very upset. It's none of your business. What do you mean how much I make an hour? That's not for you to know. And go to your room. Throws him in his room. After a while, the dad feels bad. And he goes to his son. He says, I'm so sorry I blurted out at you, but if you really want to know, I'll tell you, I make $20 an hour. The little boy went under his pillow and he took out some of the crumpled dollars that he had there. He counted them one by one. All he had was $10. So he gives them to his father and he says to his father, Dad, I know you make $20 an hour. I only have $10. Can I at least have 30 minutes of your time? And in a way, it's a sad story. I don't know if it's a true story, but it highlights the disease of our generation, where, okay, we'll fake smile and we'll give $1 to charity. I'm not undermining the effect of this. That's good to give $1 to charity, and it's even good to fake smile. Rather fake smile than not smile at all. But if you really want to shine a lasting light in the world, you really have to give of yourself completely. Be entirely present in every moment. Open yourself up, become vulnerable. I know it's hard, but become vulnerable. Stand in the line of fire and stop a conflict. Go all the way. That's the only way we can shine as bright as the Hanukkah candles. Anyway, that's lesson number 3. Lesson number 4. Anyone? Please, Julie, go for it.
Our Hanukkah candles are proud of who they are and what they are called to do. They have no second thoughts, third thoughts, and fourth thoughts. They stand tall with conviction and determination and are unintimidated by any challenge along the way. And so must we.
Right. This is true, I would say, especially towards, many challenges that we face, going back to that very often we want to be that light, but, oh, he insulted me, so I can't be that light anymore to this person. And we lose that determination, that conviction, that pride in the light that we are. And yeah, Hanukkah candles teach us that no darkness in the world phases them. They are proud of who they are. They want to be lights, and that's who they'll continue to be. It's like the line that Rabbi Sachs, the chief rabbi of Lord Jonathan Sachs of blessed memory, would often say, that he would often tell Jews across the world that the world will respect Jews who respect themselves. The world will disrespect Jews who disrespect themselves. It's true for Jews. If you respect yourself as a Jew, as a light, people might not like you, but they'll respect you because they see self-respect. If you disrespect yourself and others, you'll invite disrespect. It's true on an individual basis too, on a human basis. If I don't like myself, if I hate myself, that will evoke dislike from others. If you step all over yourself, right, then what stops other people from stepping all over you? But if you have this conviction, this pride of who you are and the light that you are called to be, then it will be much harder for people to step all over you. In fact, you'll evoke the opposite emotion. People will respect you. That's how it works psychologically. I've experienced that myself in many areas. Just to give a small example, then we'll go to lesson 5. But again, I feel like I'm not monologuing here, so I do want to hear your comments. But I can't tell you how many times I've been at Fry's or at the Trader Joe's. I'm not picking sides, Costco and other places, and people have seen me with a kippah that I wear with pride. I have no shame in wearing a kippah whatsoever. And they come to me and they say, "Oh, you're Jewish. We love Jews. We love Israel. We will support you. We stand for Israel." And I say to myself, well, you see, like who do they think they are to come? It's as if I represent the entire Jewish nation, as if I represent the state of Israel. But I think it's just the way we comport ourselves. If we comport ourselves with pride and with conviction, then it evokes respect by others. That's just the way the world works. And it's certainly a lesson from the Hanukkah candles. Okay, any comments before we go to 5, 6, 7, and 8? Anyone? Yes, Janet.
Are these, I'm assuming that just your little Fry's, Costco, whatever story. I'm assuming that these are non-Jews that are approaching you?
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So
they just, interesting.
Very much so. Very, very much so. In fact, even I'm going to tell you a little story about my 11-year-old son, Ephraim. Ephraim is very outgoing, and he loves to be a mitzvah boy, we call him, to spread mitzvahs as much as possible. So he goes to our neighbors from time to time, whether they're Jewish or not, and he offers them like donuts now for Hanukkah, and if they're Jewish, then he would do a mitzvah with them, whatever it may be. But it's amazing, like the relationship we've developed with our neighbors. Just because he knows he's a candle, he knows he's a candle, he knows his task is to light a light, he knows he has to illuminate the world, and that evokes a lot of respect. I think it evokes a lot of positivity in the neighborhood altogether. I think we all have the power to do that. We have to comport ourselves in such a way.
That's great.
Yeah. Whether, and again, and that respect is evoked by Jews and non-Jews alike. Yeah. Okay. Yes, Julie.
It's kind of like a horrible crime. You just pray it's not committed by a Jewish person, because a lot of people then just get bad, thoughts about Jews in general.
That's right. It's another side of it. I don't know if it's fair or unfair, but that's the reality, that when we walk around as Jews, we're not just walking around as individuals. We're almost walking around as ambassadors of our nation, because that's the way people see us. And that's why we have to be extra careful. That's why, by the way, there's a whole section in Jewish law that speaks about the laws of Kiddush Hashem and the laws of Chilul Hashem, the laws of sanctifying God's name and the laws, God forbid, of desecrating God's name. Because we're called to be our best selves so that we can represent God and the Jewish people in the best of ways, because that's how people look at us. That's right. Yeah. Very good. Okay, good. Lesson number 5. Anyone? Mindy, please go for it. Yeah.
Our Hanukkah candles may produce a small light, but that small light dispels a lot of darkness. We too may say to ourselves that in the face of the world's darkness, our light is too small, and that the mitzvahs we desire to do are insignificant. But our Hanukkah candles prove that our small lights too can trump and dispel much darkness.
Right. Okay, I think that's also a very powerful lesson, and that is that sometimes we say to ourselves, it's a little bit act, and what's it going to help anyway in the grand scheme of things? It's not true. That's not how Judaism views things. We Armstrong, who landed on the moon, the second man to land on the moon. Right, he was the second one, I think. He famously coined that line of a small step for man and a giant step for mankind. Well, that's a Jewish idea. We really believe that every small step for man, every small mitzvah is really a giant mitzvah for mankind. And we can never undermine or underestimate the small mitzvahs, because those small lights expel indeed a lot of darkness. It's true physically. When you light a match in a dark room, it expels a ton of darkness. So too, a small mitzvah, don't ever underestimate. It could be just a coin in tzedakah, or it could also be just that phone call, that you picking up the phone and saying hello to someone else that you haven't spoken to in a while. It's a small thing, but it certainly can expel a lot of darkness, and that's really one of the foundational Jewish ideas. Okay, that's 5. 6. Anyone? Julie, continue. Let's go.
Our Hanukkah candles unite the past, present, and future. And while they remind us of the miracle of Hanukkah some 2,000 years ago, they also illuminate our lives in the present and teach us and our future generations invaluable lessons on our imperative duty to shine bright and far. We too ought to be deeply rooted in our past, yet we must also focus on illuminating the present and ensuring that our light and the light of our divine values permeate our children and shine on into the future.
Right. It's interesting because it's true. If you look at a light, so it has an impact. And we bring that idea into fruition, into the present, the light itself, and then the light shines on into the future. And you remember lights for a long time. And it also shines, like the parable that's used is by Rabbi Simcha Bunim of Pshischa, one of the great Hasidic masters, is that, if you're walking alone in the dark and you're in a forest and you can't find your way out, and then all of a sudden it rains and you have lightning, that lightning will illuminate your pathway for just a few seconds, but it's enough for you to then strategically know how to get out of the forest. Just that split second of lightning. Same year, the light might happen at that very moment, but it benefits the future. It benefits you coming out of your forest, so to speak. So the element of light really unites the past, present, and the future. And same year, we have to be. It reminds us that we have to be deeply rooted in our past. Winston Churchill famously said that you cannot know where you are going if you do not know where you are coming from. Where you are coming from really is very much a part of you. And you have to know who you are before you know how to develop that you into the direction of you. So you have to know where you're coming from. And but it's not enough to just rely on the past. We then have to illuminate the present and then also take care of the future. I think that really summarizes Judaism. Judaism is not a religion of the past, it's not a religion of the present, it's not a religion of the future, it's a religion of all three. Right? We very much look at our past, but we don't live in our past. We know that it's the present that counts most. But we also are not that type to just live the present and forget about the future. Really, we are a year dedicated to the present for the future. I think it's the great difference between that line. I'm sure you've heard of that line coined by Archimedes, I think it was, the Greek philosopher, who said that carpe diem, live the moment, right? And therefore you can indulge in any pleasure because there is no world to come. There is no tomorrow. Just indulge in every pleasure you have right now. That's all you have. In modern days, you call that YOLO. You ever heard of that? Young people say that now, YOLO, which stands for you only live once. You only live once. So you might as well just go and, live life and indulge in every pleasure possible. That's one way of looking at life, but then you're only limited to the present. Judaism says, live the moment, you're right, but for the future. And therefore live the moment responsibly so that it can create a better future. If you're only living the moment to live the moment and you don't care about the future, then you'll be irresponsible and certainly you won't be creating any better future. But that's the difference. So carpe diem means enjoy the moment for the moment. And in Judaism, we say enjoy the moment, live the moment, but for the future. And that's what the Hanukkah lights really represent. Okay, last two lessons. Number 7, Akanukah candles. Anyone? Go ahead, Julie. Go. Oh, fine, Janet, you'll do the last one.
Our Hanukkah candles do not feel threatened by other lights. Quite the opposite. They feel bolstered and empowered by the lights that join them. Unfortunately, the same can't always be said about human beacons of light who are filled with insecurity and jealousy when faced with other people who also strive to bring light to humanity. Yet we ought to remember that when lights join together, our personal lights are not diminished, rather they are increased. They are not dimmed, rather they shine brighter than ever.
Right, very good. There's a great story about Rabbi Meir of Premishlan, who was also a Hasidic master. And one day, when he was the rabbi of his own town, Premishlan, there was a shoemaker who once came to him and said, Rabbi, you got to do something about this. This is not fair. It's putting me out of business. But there's another new shoemaker who came to town and he opened a business not far away from me. I was the only shoemaker in town. Now he's going to steal all my business and I don't know what to do. And you got to tell him to close his shop. And Rabbi Premishlan said to him, did you ever think, this is how he responded, did you ever think of why horses, when they come to a body of water, whether it's a lake or river, and they are about to go down to drink, they first kick the water before they drink. You know why they do that? He said, no, I don't know why they do that. And he said, I'll tell you why. Because when the horses are bowing down to start drinking from the water, they see a reflection of themselves in the water. Now these horses are so dumb. They think that the reflection of themselves is another horse coming to steal their water. So they kick that horse. And then they create a lot of mud in the water. And when they don't see the reflection of themselves anymore, then they drink, because then they think that, okay, we killed that other horse that came to steal my water. And they're so dumb because they don't understand that all they're seeing is really a reflection of themselves. But you know why they really are so dumb, Rabbi Meir Premishlan tells the shoemaker? Because not only do they not realize that they are just seeing a reflection of themselves, but they also don't realize that in that river, there's enough water for everybody, for all the horses. So don't you worry, you shoemaker. There's enough business in my town for you and for you. We'll both make a good living. Don't be threatened. You just focus on you. Let him focus on him. And in a way, that's the message of the Hanukkah candles. They're not threatened by darkness. They're not threatened by others. They're not threatened by other lights, certainly not. You know why? Because they know that there's plenty of darkness in the world to expel, unfortunately. And they have to focus on expelling their darkness, their realm of darkness. Other lights will focus on expelling their realm of darkness. And together, the lights are not just threatened by one another, but only together, then they can really expel all the darkness in the world. There's a great anecdote in the Talmud, the tractate of Sota, that speaks of Rabbi Abahu, who was the rabbi, the main rabbi of the time. And back then, the rabbis would have thousands of people come and listen to them. Now, there were no microphones back then. So you know what they would have? They would have a person called a Meturgaman who would listen to the rabbi's words first. And then this person would usually have a very strong voice and at the same time a great memory in order to remember the words of the rabbi. And he would listen to them and then speak them with his loud voice to the thousands that would gather. So Rabbi Abau, the rabbi of the time, had his own Meturgaman. One day the wife of Rabbi Abau and the wife of the Meturgaman meet in the marketplace. The wife of the Meturgaman tells the wife of Rabbi Abau, do you know that my husband, who bends down to listen to your husband's words and then to speak them, he really doesn't need your husband. He's wise enough to be able to teach the entire crowd all by himself. He doesn't need your husband. So, of course, the wife of Rabbi Abau got all insulted. She came home that day and she said to Rabbi Abau, look how the Meturgaman is speaking about you. Look how his wife is speaking about you. She just told me that they don't need you, that her husband can do the job all by himself. He just bends down out of respect or whatever, but he doesn't need you. And Rabbi Abau responded to his wife, and what do you care, my dear wife, whether it's from me that the words of Torah are coming out, or from him that the words of Torah, the words of Torah are coming out? Does it really matter? As long as God's name is being exalted, doesn't matter whether it's from me or from someone else. And that's exactly what lights are. Lights want to illuminate. If there's another light, why should I be threatened by another light? It only adds more light to the world. And if God decides that his light should shine through this candle and not my candle, let it be, as long as there's light in the world. So it's a powerful lesson that speaks certainly to our insecurities and to jealousies and all those bad traits. And we ought to internalize it, especially in our day and age. Okay, lesson number 8, last but not least. Let's go, Janet.
Okay. Our Hanukkah candles continue to live on long after they are gone. Although light may be physically extinguished, its spiritual impact of warmth and love forever remains in the lives of the people it illuminated. That is the power of light. The same applies to people of light. Although they may pass on, they continue to live on in the hearts of the people they have touched, and most importantly, in their actions. In the words of the Talmud, the righteous in their death are called living, and so will you and your light also live forever.
Right. That's one of the great lessons of life. I've been to too many funerals to know that at the end of the day, it's the light that the people illuminated in their lives that stays on. Nothing else, just the light. Light stays on and on and on. All the kindness, all the love, all the goodness that people did, that's the light. That stays on and on and on. My beloved Rabbi Adin Steinsaltz would often say that you only own what you give, not what you take. What you take doesn't stay with you. What you give stays on and on and on and on. And that's the power of light. Light illuminates forever. And therefore, when we stare at the Hanukkah candles, we should really ask ourselves, what light am I creating today? Because that's the only thing that will be left of me. Not my car and not my clothes and not my house, nothing. The only thing that will be left is the light that I create. So what light have I created today? The Torah describes the death of the righteous in a very peculiar way. It says that when a righteous person dies in the Torah, for example, Abraham or Sarah, Isaac or Rivka, it doesn't say that they died. It said that they expired, and they were gathered unto the people. What does that mean? What the Torah is trying to teach us is that the righteousness of these people is gathered unto the others, unto the people that they touched. Righteous people don't wind up in the ground. They wind up in the hearts of the people that they touched. That's where they wind up now. Thank God they touch a lot of people. So their lives continue on and on in those hearts, in the hearts of the myriads of people that they touch, because they understand the power of light. If I don't touch others, if I don't create light, and not much will be left of it. But the power of Hanukkah candles should emphasize that point. And we should recall these words and really ask ourselves these questions every day. Do we create light today? Before we go to sleep, we ought to look back at the day and say, well, was there a glimmer of light that I was responsible for, that I initiated, that I kindled today? And if not, then maybe we should do we should create 2 glimmers of light the next day to make up for that which we missed today. But it's certainly a question that needs to reverberate in our minds each and every day. And no doubt, if we can answer this question with an affirmative yes, then our lights will live on and on and on, way after 120 years old.